Welcome to HexaTalk, an industry refresher powered by Hexanica. I'm your host Aditi Iyer, and today we are live with Yogesh Pandit, CEO and founder of Hexanica, and we'll be getting an overview of the data-driven approach. Welcome, Yogesh.
Thank you, Aditi.
So, Think Human, Act Digital is how startups are activating data-driven orientation. It is argued that data-driven organizations that integrate data, human abilities, and proactive management are more effective in innovation. We would like to hear your take on the data-driven process.
Sure, Aditi. I mean, when you were kind of introducing this topic very briefly, you mentioned how startups are activating data-driven orientation. But what I would like to bring to people's attention that these startups that Aditi perhaps have mentioned are now perhaps the top 5 or 10 companies in the world. And I'm talking about a startup called Google. You know, Google was a startup 20 years ago. It's a search engine, but mind well, Google makes money on data. The second startup is Facebook. Yes, it's a great networking, connecting application and solution, but Facebook makes money on data. And if you really think about even the phone providers or any other top companies, whether it's Apple, whether it is any other, they are all focusing on data. In fact, recently Apple made a significant investment in a company that is focused on data in financial services. So you will see this trend across the industry, whether it is new age startup with a couple of people, or whether it is a startup that now have become one of the largest organization in the world. It is all about data today. There used to be a phrase called data is the new oil, but now that phrase is also becoming old. And if you see what is happening in financial services, Aditi particularly, the institutions that are focusing on monetizing data are essentially becoming successful, and institutions, traditional institutions that are not focusing on data as one of the key pillars for their growth, their revenue, or key pillars for optimization, they are failing. So that would be my initial response, Aditi. Back to you.
Right. Despite the increasing need for data to become more efficient, companies still continue to struggle to implement a data-driven approach. Why is that so?
I mean, in just HexaTalk, it will be not appropriate to, or it will not do justice to answer this. It's a very holistic question, or the answer needs to be holistic for that matter. But I'll start with culture. That and I'm focusing very much on financial institutions, particularly community banks and credit unions at this point of time. These banks have been built with relationships. They're part of a community. People know each other, and they have been used to building businesses purely based on relationships, right? And most of the community banks had the data or knew the data of their customers. But as cultures are changing, technology is changing, the way to grow is not just by depending on old ways of doing businesses. That's where data-driven marketing, data-driven compliance, data-driven sales, data-driven transformation comes into the play. You cannot have a digital transformation today without data being it's one of the key pillars. And that's why if you really see the trend, the fintech companies, which are the new startups by your definition, or the new tech companies, and by definition, new tech are Apple or Google, or for that matter, PayPal or Amazon. These companies are slowly venturing into the space of the financial services, traditional financial services firms. But if you look at their strategy, it is mostly data driven. They have data as a fundamental pillar of growth, uh, knowing customers, cross-selling to customer, upselling to customers, or for that matter, today I was on a call with one of the largest firms that serves financial services, and the lady there was talking that, hey, Yogesh, garbage in, garbage out, whether it's compliance or anything else, and that is where a big demand, big need is. So culture is one aspect. I will add two or three more, but perhaps we should talk about each of these aspects in length in the forthcoming Hexatalk. The second is the technology. Once you have, okay, culture that I want to do something, it's the technology. Traditionally, smaller institutions particularly were all dependent on their service providers. And I think we have a conversation coming up on that. Now, these service providers were built purely as software companies, and they're great in building softwares. But building a software with just Java and .NET and these technologies versus a data-driven organization, data-driven software, or keeping data as a focus is completely different. It is like, hey, you are great in building cars with gas engines and diesel engines or petrol engines, but now you have to build a car on batteries. And that is a different approach. So the technology, the framework, everything to be used for data-driven enterprise, data-driven software is completely different. So technology plays a completely important role on this place. So first is the culture, second is technology. Now, the third is people. People have been used to building cars, servicing cars, maintaining cars on traditional engines, whether it's gas engine, petrol engine, or whether it's diesel engine. Building cars on batteries, maintaining cars on batteries, or doing this in a different way is a complete different approach. And people, as far as I am concerned, have become the biggest roadblock. I've got responses that, hey, by the way, after talking to me, we are going to go into soul searching. Or when I say that whatever you are going to do in 9 months can be done in 3 months. Or we are saying that you don't need to add all these number of data engineers to have a data program. You can do it self-service way. These are so much shocking to various people that it becomes a big problem. Last but not the least, the processes, especially with large banks now. With large banks are so much entangled in their processes where they have spent not just millions, but billions of dollars, that entangling that and saying that, hey, by the way, I've put in so much infrastructure money on the traditional way of running cars. Now I don't need enough service stations. I don't need gas stations. And you're saying you don't even need to maintain. Oh, it's going to take time for me to get on to a different system. And that is the last piece. The processes sometimes are very complicated. And for especially large enterprises, it's very difficult to change. So those are some of the challenges: culture, people, process, technology. I don't think it is any different than any other innovation, but that is primarily a problem when it comes to building a data-driven organization.
Thank you for all the insightful comments, Yogesh. Any closing statement from your end?
I feel we have come to a point, Aditi, that now it's not an option to be a data-driven organization or not be. If you want to grow, by the way, let me actually change that statement. It's not if you want to go. If you don't grow, you will die. Because these organizations that are having data-driven focus will come into your market. The market is ruthless. The market is becoming more and more competitive. So if you want to be alive, I don't think in today's, especially artificial intelligence driven world, you cannot have an approach or a system that is not data driven. So I've come to a conclusion that if these organizations do not adopt data driven processes, then these organizations will die.
Thank you, Yogesh. That was a wonderful session.
Thank you very much.